Be talking a little bit to you today about financial exploitation. I primarily work with the elderly and disabled under a grant called VOCA. That's the Victims of Crime Act. First, I'll talk just a quick outline, a little bit about why this is important, and then I have a few case studies and a little bit about the law, and then we'll wrap up by identifying some people you can contact if you know anyone who is a victim. Why is this important? The baby boomers are booming. About 10,000 Americans turn 65 every day, and that will go on until about 2030 by the studies that we have. West Virginia has the second largest percentage of population 65 years or older. 25,000 new seniors per year. About this results in about 71 mountaineers turn 65 every single day. More sandwich generation children. These are children who are raising their own children and caring for their aging parents at the same time. Increase in seniors in long-term care or assisted living facilities. I have to tell you, I have a few case studies later, but the bulk of the calls I get are from assisted living facilities. Family members utilizing medical and durable powers of attorney. That's the number 2 call that I get. People that are in charge of someone else's finances is the breeding ground for the cases that I handle. Appointments of guardians and conservators is the last piece of what I deal with. Financial exploitation. All of this results in the fastest growing silent crime of the 21st century. We call it the silent crime of the 21st century because, as you will see later, this is one of the most underreported crimes in the country, and even when reported, it's very difficult. They're difficult cases to handle, and they come with a lot of special problems. This is another GAO study. We've looked at a few of those here today. This study identified hundreds of allegations: physical abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. Some of the most eye-opening things that I have learned in this position are how these 3 things intertwine, and they intertwine a lot, much more than you would expect. This data was between 1990 and 2010. About 12% of elder abuse and neglect involve issues of financial exploitation. About 20 cases, the GAO found about $5.5 million in assets were exploited from about 158 incapacitated victims. That is an older study. A new study that I have found, now this is not a government office study, this is an independent study. It found about $36.5 billion annual. And those are their extrapolated numbers by the cases that they looked at, including about $17 billion in exploitation, $12.8 billion fraud, $6.7 billion in trust abuse. This also comes from that TrueLink study. They call this kind of the iceberg. Small losses evidence much larger losses. So I know a lot of you are probably reading forward. I usually have a great reveal here that I will, I guess, lose some power in. But every $20 found, that's $20 exploited by someone, $20 given to the save the alpaca giraffes in Africa. These scam artists that send things to elderly people. For every $20 donated to something like that or exploited, these folks could expect to find about $2,000 more under the surface. Someone receiving about one telemarketing phone call per day is about most likely to suffer about 3 times more financial loss than someone who doesn't. About almost 1 million seniors currently skip meals as a result of financial abuse. And there's the link to the study. This is a Lori Orlov study for TrueLink. This full study is available online. What is financial exploitation? This is a pretty simple definition, but it's a good lawyerly definition. And as I was preparing for this, I apologize for my horrible typing skills. Miss McCabe would be very upset with me. But intentional misappropriation or misuse or the diminishment of funds or assets due to undue influence of an elderly person, protected person, or incapacitated adult, but does not apply to transactions made in good faith. So the basic elements are misappropriation of funds or undue influence in the diminishment of funds or assets of someone in the protected class, an elderly person, a protected person, or incapacitated adult. And there is a good faith carve out in this statute. Basically, if Jack the son takes his mother's money inappropriately, deposits it into his own bank account, spends it, uses it on something that is not for his mother without his mother's permission, that is financial exploitation. If Jack is his mother's power of attorney, decides he thinks he should invest some of this money in a certain venture, that venture goes belly up, she loses some of mom's money, not financial exploitation. Usual suspects, these are folks that we deal with: computer hackers, identity thieves, a couple different scams. We'll address a few of these quickly. Mainly phone scams. Quickly, I won't read through all this. This is someone calling an elderly person posing as their grandson or granddaughter, saying, "I'm in trouble. I've been arrested in Brazil. Please don't tell Dad. Wire me money." Wire transfer after transfer. Son walks in the room. Son was never in Bolivia. Chillingly, I was actually going through this scenario with my wife's grandfather, and his head cocked to the side. He had actually gotten this call. So someone had said, they just say grandpap, granddad, but he talks to my wife almost every day on the phone, and recognized that it was neither her or my brother-in-law immediately and hung up the phone. One of the other shocking things I've learned in this position is that anyone can be a victim. Anyone. One of the more shocking things I've learned is military service members have high rates of victimhood in these type of scams, because they are folks who are conditioned to take orders from people, especially people of authority. And many of these scams, what they do is imitate someone in a position of authority. It really depends on where you are, what your link to the outside world is. Middle-aged folks, 45 to 55, more likely to be victims of romance scams. Younger folks are more likely to be victims of text message scams, online app scams, things of that nature. They use those things more. Elderly people are more likely to be victims of landline scams. They're the folks that have landlines these days. Older people are more attractive targets, but the research that we've gone through, because they're perceived to have the accumulated savings. They both have it and are perceived to have it. And they are also more likely to have some type of impairment, or are perceived to have some type of impairment. These are all the Federal Trade Commission breakdown of some of these scams we're looking at. Really, we're dealing with this 42%, the other. And the other is the unusual suspects. The unusual suspects are professionals, engineers, bankers. We've had a case with a doctor who took money. Basically, these are folks who are in positions of trust. That's how they get close to people. That's how they are put in positions to do the wrong that they do. No one just trusts someone walking up to them on the street to handle their finances. So that's the most important part of the unusual suspects. These are some of the issues that come up dealing with these cases. You know, we're dealing with family members, people who are close. We're dealing with people who sometimes the vulnerable person moves into the family home. They are a source of income, sometimes a necessary source of income. And where you have that type of dependent relationship, that's where some of these toxic things they come to pass. We deal with trauma, ambivalence sometimes, and victims of diminished capacity. We deal with isolation, and again, the dependency on people can result in some relationships turning toxic. A lot of folks are embarrassed to report this stuff. There's a cognitive dissonance that goes with I have been had, I have been taken advantage of, especially by someone I love, and embarrassment that goes along with that. How could I let this happen? Sometimes we're dealing with criminal activities, even by again the unusual suspects. This is my standard case. Someone puts mom in the nursing facility, says we'll private pay, ghosts, disappears. A few months later, can't get a hold of the caregiver. We're trying to find out if mom is eligible for Medicaid, what kind of insurance there is. This person won't call me back. Hasn't been in touch with the facility in months. Now we have a bill accumulating. As the bill accumulates, can't find the person with the power of attorney, the person who signed the contracts, put mom in the nursing facility. In this case, we had a guardianship hearing. Sheriff was appointed the guardian conservator. After the hearing, son tried to liquidate the bank accounts and leave town. His wife turned him in. His wife called, turned him in, and he actually got arrested. The nightmare case. This is what highlights one of the reasons why we call this a silent crime. This is a case where this gentleman was complaining to his physicians that my brother is stealing from me. He's trying to kill me. The physicians speak to him, speak to the brother. They diagnosed this gentleman with paranoid delusions. He just got dementia. He's a crazy old man. A few months later, this gentleman's house burns with him in it. We do some digging. We look into his finances. Brother took out his life insurance the day of the fire, and very soon before this fire. Social worker, we start looking into the finances. 160 grand this guy has taken of his brother's money and then tried to burn him alive in his home. When this gentleman was reporting this, and nobody believed him. Criminal. It is a crime. Financial exploitation is a crime in West Virginia. This is the statute. It's basically very similar to larceny. I think I'm running out of time. Misdemeanor, felony, that $1,000 is a cutoff. Really, the change is it's felony, financial exploitation, punishable by $10,000 and 2 to 20 in jail. It's also embezzlement. It's misuse of a fiduciary relationship. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this statute. This is embezzlement and larceny. You can still be guilty of embezzlement and larceny if you commit financial exploitation and under a fiduciary. The civil remedy, it is a standalone cause of action. It's a standalone. The judge can return property, award damages. It comes with double and treble damages for a fiduciary. Comparison here, really these are very similar, but you'll see the financial exploitation felony is 2 to 20 years and up to $10,000 fine, a pretty significant increase from just grand larceny. Lawyers do have a duty to inform of potential abuse and neglect. That's hiding kind of in the Uniform Guardianship Act, so I just briefly wanted to touch it, that we are a CLE with some attorneys here. Attorneys are not listed in the general mandatory reporting statute, but in this statute you are. These, if you have the information in the handout, these are all of the statutes that Jennifer Taylor, my colleague, she is our half-time financial exploitation attorney. He probably does full-time work. But these are the statutes. Look them up. This is all of us. Jennifer and Joe are in Charleston. I'm in Morgantown. Amanda is in Martinsburg. I think this started with Jennifer only in a half-time role. Now we are 4 attorneys strong in this, handling litigation on behalf of some of these clients. And that's what I have. Thank you for entertaining me.